You go back to Saturday's game, hard-fought win. Obviously, really proud of the way the defense stepped up and played. You look at that third quarter and you go back, and that was really the changing point for what the defense was able to do to step up and consistently stop the run and get those turnovers, especially for scores. And that was huge with what we needed to get done because offensively, we really weren't hitting on all cylinders, especially in the third quarter. And you go back and say, what was the issues that had it after? Mark had actually asked that question in the press conference, and I said, I think it was one person per play that wasn't doing what they were supposed to. And not necessarily missed assignments, just not executing the assignment called to a high enough level to give us the success. And going back, and that's exactly what I would say happened. And we got to find ways to be more consistent with it. The punt game, obviously Joe Doyle did fantastic. Julian Barnett on the coverage and all those things was good. Got to continue to clean up our kickoff coverage, one with the ball placement, kicking the ball, preferably in the back of the end zone, but also then the coverage as well. Make sure we're consistent with that. But all in all, it was a good team win. Obviously now focused on bringing Temple here to town. It's good to get them 11 a.m. game on Saturday. A conference opponent that we know quite a bit about. Obviously they got the best of us last season, and our guys understand the task at hand. It's going to be the biggest game of the season, and we know that we've got to prepare well. They are first in the country in red zone offense. They are third in the country in total sacks as a defense. They got two great defensive ends that can get after it and do a nice job with that. They got a new head coach that has those guys playing very, very hard. They rotate multiple quarterbacks, and so we got a lot to prepare for, and it's going to be a tough task ahead, but we're excited about the preparation this week.
Ryan, have you had updates on Jonah and Austin as far as their injuries, as well as Julian Burnett? We saw you got hurt on that punt return.
All three are day-to-day, so that will be determined. We obviously yesterday's a lighter practice, today's an off day, so we'll see as we progress through the week.
With Gamble, is it with Austin, is it a concerning injury because he was hurt last year? Is it related to that injury?
I don't think it's the same relation to that injury, but Austin's a tough guy, and he was able to walk around a little bit afterwards, but no, we think he'll be okay.
And then with Jonah, obviously, we saw him obviously come back a little bit in the second quarter. I think you said he stayed in the second half. How concerned are you with your depth now? Obviously, with two linemen now who are day-to-day, and obviously, as I mentioned last week, a couple linemen who have left the program since.
Yeah, I think, like I said in the post game, right, you can never have enough depth at offensive line, and I think one of those things is the good news is it's a next man up mentality, right? We've got a lot of faith in Mykylan Pounders. He's a young man that actually started the season for us at left tackle versus Mississippi State, so obviously we had a firm belief that he was capable of doing so. And then Braxton Alford's also a guy that's played a lot of football for us, so we like it. Obviously we're going to have to continue to develop a lot of our guys that haven't played a ton for us on the field on Saturdays. But the great news is we've got a whole week of practice to continue to get guys developed if we need to.
And does it concern you now? You mentioned Temple sacks. Does it kind of concern a little bit that the depth's going to have to be tested because Temple's bringing a lot of pressure up front?
Yeah, no, look, everybody's always known Temple for their defense. I go back to our first year here. They do a wonderful thing there with their single digits, and the Temple tough. And I believe it was my first season here. We were playing them maybe on a Thursday night, and Matt Rule, who's a good friend of mine, was the head coach. And you look at their front seven, I said, I think all 7 guys were in single digits. I said, holy cow. And they had a couple first-rounders screaming off the edge. And I was the O-line coach then, and I still have nightmares about those guys that are now playing at a high level in the NFL that were coming off the edge. But back to your question is, we've got to do a good job. We've got to figure out ways to be able to block them. But, look, we're going to have our hands full. It's going to be a great challenge for us on Saturday.
What was the message after this win? It was an ugly win, but sometimes you got to be able to pull those out. Just what was the message in the locker room?
So you call it ugly, I call it to win, and I'll take as many ugly wins as we can. I hope we have thousands of ugly wins. That's great. You can call. I've been called ugly too, so you can call them a bunch of ugly wins, and we'll take them. Is it called ugly because maybe the offense didn't perform as well? Sure, but the defense played outstanding, and special teams was back to where it needs to be, just more consistent. But I told our team right after, and I've done this now, and I hope we can continue to do this throughout the season. In those wins, and hopefully we have plenty more, 1 week at a time. Like, does everybody have something they need to fix? And I asked the team, and I mentioned this in the press conference, how many of you guys feel like you played your best ball? How many of you guys can continue to improve it? And the entire locker room, coaches, myself, raise their hands. Most of us, multiple hands saying, yeah, we all got a lot of work to do to improve. And we know that as a team. And that's why I appreciate about our guys, like I told you guys in the press conferences, right? Even the defensive guys, even Zay Collins, who played a fantastic game. I even called Zay out yesterday to me. I said, there's a few plays you're going to watch on film that you know you're going to correct. Yes, sir, I know. And that's awesome because that means those guys understand that there's so much more to be attained. And we know there's things to work on. And the message is we got to continue to strive to get better. Our attitude and approach have to be great. We understand how big this game is, and we've got to have that mindset. How do we find a way to go 1-0 this week?
And then when you talk about like the identity of the team, your last two wins, you won 415 yards, 330 or 360 passing yards. To be able to know that you can also win on the back of your defense, what does that do to how you perceive this team and what you guys are able to do from week to week?
Yeah, I think we talk about it all the time, and we go back to even some of the conversations in August, right? Ryan, what do you want your team to be known for? Do you want to be explosive on offense? You know, great on defense and sound on special teams? Sure, that's what every head coach in the country is going to say, but I'm not going to give you coach speak sound bites. I mean, look, we're going to take games however they unfold, and it is nice to be able to see that our defense was able to gain some confidence by what they're able to do. We've also seen games, right? Maybe we run the ball a little bit better. You know, we've been able to run the ball a little bit better in the second halves of games, and we didn't play as well, you know, passing the ball, and we weren't as efficient passing the ball this game. But then the week before, man, we were hitting on all cylinders in offense. So what it's showing is that we are capable in so many areas. Now, how do you stack it game in and game out where you can say, okay, we are a consistent football team? And I said that's always what I've got to do as a head coach is make sure we're a consistently sound football team, right? Be able to run the ball. Now, if you can run the ball when you want, pass the ball when you want, play good defense when you want, then you're going to win a lot of football games. But just continue to be able to rely on certain things, right? If the run game's not there, we got great faith in our quarterbacks, our wide receivers, and our tight ends to be able to do what we need to do, right? If the pass game's not there, we got to be able to rely on our running backs and the offensive line to handle that stuff. No differently, the defense, right? Whether it's pass defense, run defense, we'll see it show up in different ways. I think going into that game, we'd sit there and say, okay, North Texas is going to probably try to run the ball 60 times. Well, a different tune. They obviously said, hey, we're going to try to pass it, and that's something that hadn't been their MO. And so it is nice to be able to rely on all facets of our program.
You said on you said on Saturday post game that they brought pressure like 10% of the time on film, and then they were bringing blitzes. The quote was that you haven't seen since the 80s. Then you said that you need answers for that, but I'm curious, when they bring something that's so far outside the box, how do you provide answers for that?
Well, part of that is in-game adjustments, and we've got to continue to be great at it. And, you know, having an intelligent quarterback that can sit there and digest and say, okay, here's what's happening. And sometimes, and we had the same deal with Brady, right? They're smart and they understand. Well, I saw this, and that's why I did this. Okay, well, how about this? Just stick with what you think. You know, trust the gut initially and maybe the play call. And that's why I appreciate about Seth is you can have that coach-to-player dialogue that's almost like you're talking to another coach. And we got to be great at in-game adjustments and continue to do so. But also, it's just going to be a reminder, just because what you see on film doesn't mean you can guarantee it. Now, we also have this old adage in our coaching profession, you don't go chasing ghosts, right? Because if I sat there, and I think you guys asked, like, how far back do you go when you're watching some of the film? And you can go as crazy as you want, right? We can go throw on this defensive coordinator at Temple, his Kansas stuff, and say, okay, well, you know, when he was at Kansas, he did this, this, and this. And all of a sudden you drive yourself nuts, and then now you're putting too much out there for the players to prepare for. It's ultimately always going to come back to what we are doing. And that's not coach speak, that's just really, okay, can we continue to improve ourselves? Hey, here's what the scheme's calling for, regardless, right? We've seen it all. I mean, our defense has shown so many different things. We've practiced against it in the spring, you know, in training camp now, that whatever they show us, here are the answers, and hopefully we have those answers to the test before the test.
Speaking of Seth's confidence, this is the first game where he really looked rattled in his young career, and so you talked a little bit about like having a coach on the field. So how does he look to you coming off of that? As far as, you know, I can do this, but it wasn't working for him. That's just one of those things that wasn't working.
Yeah, it was certainly, and what we all appreciate about Seth is he'll be the first to tell you he's got to be better, and he's not one of those that gets, he's frustrated, and it bothers him, and he cares so much about doing it the right thing, but it also didn't bother him so much in game that it was affecting the next play mentality, because he still went out there and was able to deliver some things and put us in the right situations. And was it his best game? No, it certainly wasn't. And so, you know, the conversations with Seth on the sideline were just like we're having right now. He was calm, cool, collected, normal Seth, and said, okay, hey, coach, here's why I did this, and here's what I thought. Okay, well, here, if they're doing this, this is what we should probably do. Okay, got it, understood. And then he goes and sits down and be able to have those same conversations on the headset with Coach Ramsey. And it's, you know, we've never seen Seth frantic or any of that stuff. Yes, he shows emotion, and he's a great young man, but he is very, very similar to Brady White in that, like, man, this guy just doesn't real get rattled. But great news is, he was watching the film Saturday night. He was ready for it, watching it Sunday again, and understood that, hey, here's some of the things I can get fixed, which is great because he understands, and they're all correctable things. It's not like we're sitting there saying, man, all of a sudden he was inaccurate or his throwing motions got to get fixed. I think we said, okay, he was doing some things. And credit to him, he also showed his ability to continue to be more elusive in the pocket and all those things. So that was a part of his game that we continue to see grow. And, obviously we don't want him running all over the field, but, up here he's strong mentally and he knows how to continue to make adjustments in order to improve.
Right, when you're reaching almost halfway through the season, you're going to week 5 right now. How disappointing is it that you're still trying to kind of find some answers as you go from that second quarter to the third quarter, 6 straight punts, things like that? Is it disappointing that there's still you're trying to kind of find yourself? I know injuries kind of play a part and stuff like that, but as you get ready to reach the meat of your schedule, I guess you want not to have to do that.
Well, I think any time, right? You have to punt 6 straight times. That's frustrating, disappointing. Searching for answers. No, we had the answers, we just didn't execute. And so, Mike, like I was saying, it may have been one guy at a time that we didn't do it. Yes, there's some play calls that we probably should have done a little bit better. But I don't sit there and say, man, I'm just disappointed. There's no time to sit there and reflect upon, okay, how do we improve and get better on that stuff? The week before, right, every week's a different season. And so not searching for answers. There's none of that. It's, okay, how do we execute better at a higher level? And that's our job as coaches, to put our guys in the right position to do so. You may call it disappointing, which is great. We want to be more successful, more consistent on offense, and that's our job to make sure we're doing it. But I think it was really a lack of execution by certain individuals at certain times, and play calling. I'm not calling Coach Ramsey on that. Just maybe we can put our guys in better positions or to have success. They did a great job. We only had 3 explosive plays in that game, and that's frustrating because that's something we've been able to show that we were able to do it, and we weren't able to do that at a high level. And that third quarter was not our best brand of football. It certainly wasn't. But if we can play 3 good quarters of offensive football for most of the rest of the season, hopefully, at the end of the day, there's a W at the win column, on the left side of the column. But, we got to keep battling. We got to find ways to continue to improve. I'll be the first to admit, right, we're not consistent enough on offense. And for whatever reason, how do we get that? And that's why I can't wait to get back on the practice field to find ways to get it fixed.
Hey,
With
Coach,
Julian out,
You're in a situation now, Temple gives you an opportunity to go 2-0 in the conference. When you look at what's going on in the conference right now, I mean, who would have thought that Navy would knock off East Carolina? So this is a conference that's kind of there for the taking. Each team has kind of showed some ebbs and flows. It's all about it, winning conferences, and winning this conference. How good do you feel as you hit the second game of this conference season with the opportunities that are out there?
Yeah, we're so reality. Once the season goes, we're so short-sighted and have our blinders on. Look, I look at the scoreboards and see what else is going on in college football, right? I mean, you go back and say, okay, you think about what Tulane was able to do versus Kansas State, and then you turn back around and say, wait, Kansas State did what to Oklahoma? And you look, that's college football. Congrats to our guys out in Middle Tennessee, right, with what they're able to do. I don't think anybody sat there. That's the college football. When you're dealing with 18 to 23-year-olds, there's no more surprises anymore. You're going to look, scroll through the scores on a Saturday, and you're going to say, okay, wow, okay. And in our conference especially, we know that every team was capable. And that's been proven, right? In 6 years here, now going year 7, we've seen that there's any team is capable of doing everything. And so the surprise is, it should have been this, should have been, man. But look, congrats to Navy. But look, we have enough to focus on just in trying to get better with Temple. We'll look up when the season ends, and hopefully we're in the right spot that the standings will take care of themselves.
All right, so 2 weeks ago, you limited Arkansas State's #1 target, Chip. This week, you limited North Texas's run game. How much pride do you guys take as a coaching staff in forcing teams to beat you in other ways outside of their conference?
Well, I think that's part of it. I think, a lot of these teams, they have what they're known for, right? And as the season goes on, you start to stack up and say, okay, this team's really good at this, or this player is really where they're special. And now you have some teams that you just say, man, they're pretty darn consistent and they've got a lot of space. But I do think that's important, right? Okay, if one of our keys to victory is to stop number 7 for Arkansas State, and you do so, then you're saying, okay, we did one of those things. So you do take a lot of pride in that. No different, right? The goal, like I told you guys going into the North Texas game, was we got to be able to stop the run tackle better. We're able to stop the run, still got to improve on some tackling. But I think that's now one of those things, okay, what we're asking our young men to do, they're able to go out there and execute it. Now, I'd like to see it done in all 3 phases. But, yeah, it's great, and there'll be challenges, right, with facing Temple and the different things that they bring to us.
With Julian out, what are some options going to be to still provide depth at DB? Obviously, I know Davion and Greg have been starting at cornerback, but are there any other options you might consider? Does that mean looking at Joel Williams? Maybe we haven't really heard much about him since he transferred in.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that Julian's for certain out. He's day-to-day as well.
Day-to-day.
Yep. So, but we have seen a lot of guys in our secondaries. You guys well know, right? Cam Smith has played some. You talk about just the variations of different guys. Joel Williams played a lot of special teams for us recently and actually got in the game some at safety this past game. You know, we got to continue to be creative and see who's available. You know, when you looked at Davion Ross, you know, he was in the right spot. Some things, you know, just credit to them. They made some great plays, and he's just got to be able to find a way to knock the ball out. Greg Rubin continues to play at a high level. So we still continue to like our depth at secondary. We'll keep looking and seeing what's out there, and part of that is, you know, how does this practice unfold and who's ready to play.
Speaking of Joel, obviously he transferred in just before the season. How is his adjustment coming? Because obviously he came in so late. Is he still kind of like finding his way a little bit?
Yeah, you know, credit to him. He's been phenomenal. He's really taken the bull by the horns. Evan, he's taken a lot of pride in learning this defense and learning the special teams, and that's been great because, you know, a lot of times when you do come in later, you can just say, okay, I'll figure it out and I'll just play special teams or I'll learn later on. But for him, it's been, hey, I want to learn it all. He's doing that. He's handling his business academically, so quite pleased with him so far.
And Rodney, we saw also practicing with the linebackers a little bit. It's kind of, you know, he's been playing more special teams, but is he now with the linebackers now, or what's kind of going on with that?
You know, he has always been, even since he's been here, kind of one of those in-the-box safeties.
Right.
And even, you know, underneath our previous defensive schemes, he's always kind of been one of those guys that we did play a little bit more in the box. And the creativity with this defensive scheme is we can put guys all over the field. So, you know, whether we call him a box safety or a linebacker, neither here nor there, but that's, you know, kind of been his role since he's, you know, been part of our program. And, you know, maybe we thought about maybe training him a little bit more with the linebackers. And so often we're playing these 11 personnel teams, right? And so if he's out there, you know, maybe splitting the difference between the tight end and the wide receiver, or, you know, playing some in the box to some coverage, you know, I think that suits his attributes pretty darn well.
How have you seen Joe Doyle be able to perfect this craft now that he's not playing double duty?
Yeah, you know, that to Joe's credit, we all know he was asked to do something last year that I don't think any of us really wanted him to do. Now, really pleased with he was able to make some kicks, and he stepped up to the plate big time for us last year. But now a guy like him, you know, you go back, he was a freshman All-American, and we always knew he had a live leg. And I've seen that practice. I'm like, I've told these NFL scouts come out, I'm like, he's an NFL punter. And now that he's able to just focus on that, he's healthy, you know, I mean, just what he was able to do with ball placement and, you know, just the way you guys have seen, you know, it's not like we're just asking him to just kick right over here. I mean, he's able to put different variations. He can kick left, he can roll out to his right. He can do a variety of things. And it's been pleasing because now, hey, he's just able to focus on that. Now, like I told him, I don't want to see him on the field as much as we did this past Saturday. I mean, he's a nice young man, but I'd actually rather him keep a nice empty seat on the bench and just sit there. But he's done great. And for him to be able to just focus on what he was asked to do, you guys can see how special a player he can be.
Last thing for me, Ryan. When Caden got here as a walk-on, do you remember just kind of what that process was like? I know obviously he was with the tight end, but you were still the O-line coach. Was there? Do you remember kind of his first adjustments, kind of, you know, learning that position a little bit?
Yeah, he was a 6'5", 212-pound kid that looked like he was lost trying to block people. And, I mean, as a quarterback, you're not really ever asked to block anybody. And he came in here, and he I don't know if he wanted any part of it. And he's like, hey, when do we just get to go catch balls? And when you guys going to put me out there at wide receiver? But to his credit, the development of his body, the development of himself as a pass catcher, as a blocker, have been phenomenal. And he is really the total tight end. You always say, well, you don't want just a blocking tight end. You don't want just a pass catching, especially with what we do here offensively. You know, he's able to run the split zone. He's able to lead up on blocks, but he's able to be a big target that can run and do a lot of things. And so credit to him because he's worked really hard to get to where he's at. And then the great thing about him is he's just a sophomore, really. I mean, imagine his development the next few years, and that's what's been so pleasing. He's really bought into the way we do things, and he's going to continue to have a bright future for us.
Like, with his maturation, when you talk about a young man that's only a sophomore, but I mean, he's also a dad, and to be able to juggle those kind of things and be as effective as he's been, especially these last few weeks. I know he bided his time, but now with everything in the periphery too, how amazing is that he's kind of able to kind of, as you said, put the blinders on when it's time to snap?
Yeah, I think part of that is the maturation. He is a little bit older for a sophomore, and he is a father, and I know that role is very important to him. And I think what that does is that it also has allowed him to be really successful here because he knows, okay, I'm no longer just playing for myself. Now I've got a son that, one, I want to hopefully one day grow up and be a role model for, and that he's going to see that the dad was able to put in the work and handle his business academically, live right off the field. And I think when you have something else that motivates you or inspires you, whatever it is, and for all of us, right, we always ask our guys, what's their why? And I don't care what your role is, whether you're the head coach, the janitor, or the starting tight end, what's your why, what's your reasoning? And he's got a little bit different why now. And not that has changed the way he works, because he's always worked hard. But sometimes when you know, man, I have to do great, I have to do things the right way, and I've got to continue to work. He's put those blinders on and had elite focus, and that speaks to his maturation, the type of character the young man has.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, guys.